Welcome back to Flat Iron Tuning. For this episode of the Shop Chronicles, the yellow WRX is on the lift and we are making good progress going through the suspension here. So it's now time for me to bring you up to speed on the changes that we're making in the car and how I picked the parts that I did to kind of move this project along. So right quick, I want to say at the beginning, if you like what we're doing on the channel and if you like the content that we're putting out, please do like and subscribe to the channel. It helps us out a ton, and anything you can do to help share and get the word out about what we're doing is greatly appreciated. All right, so for this project this time around, so this is the second time around now that I've gone through the suspension on this car. And here's the big difference between now and about 12 years ago when I did this last. 12 years ago, this was my daily driven car. I drove this car every day. I was putting well over 1,000 miles every month on it. And honestly, you know, I wanted it to be fast, I wanted it to be fun, I wanted it to be a quick track car, but when I picked the parts that I did and made all the decisions, largely it was based around the fact that I wanted to have fun every day. I wanted to enjoy driving this car every day, and I didn't want to put anything on the car that was going to make me hate driving the car or like driving the car less, just to have a little bit faster car when I took it to the track. But now that's not the case. This really is something that I plan to use for more dedicated track time. And so picking the parts this time is based around making it as fast as it possibly can be on the track. And, you know, looking at the cars that I'm benchmarking against, Nigel, Tasso, Dussex, all of those cars that I'm benchmarking against are race cars. They've got cages, stripped interiors. You know, the builds of those cars are all around making the car as fast as possible on track. And so this time around, as I'm picking the parts, that's kind of how I'm making my decisions as well. So as we dive into it, let's talk about the coilovers, the suspension. So I had this Cusco Zero 2Es on them for a long time, over a decade, and they work great for me. Love them. So basically when I was going to look at putting new coilovers on the car, I called up the guys at Cusco USA and had a conversation with them about what I was doing. And where we landed was looking at the 03Rs and the 03X, so the next level up in their suspension. The 03X it's like a full motorsports grade suspension. It has external reservoirs and it's three-way adjustable. So you've got fast compression, slow compression, rebound adjustment. The 03R is still a motorsports coilover, but it's only rebound adjustment that you have. And both the 3R and the 3X are full four-way, or all four inverted struts, which is a great benefit for the GD chassis for sure. And in talking it through, the biggest concern I had with going up to the 3X, even though it is probably the best value for a three-way adjustable coilover for a GD or any Subaru for that matter at this point, was the complexity of having the external reservoirs in the three-way adjustment. I just don't know that I'm ready to have that extra complexity. My concern was with all of that extra range of adjustment that I would have more potential to get into trouble or have things set up wrong and not working right properly. And I like the simplicity of what the 3Rs offered. And in talking to the guys at Cusco USA, they said, well, we could order you in the 3Rs, and then if we build them here in-house, we could do a couple trick things for you in the assembly to kind of bridge the gap between just the standard 3R and the 3X and give me a little bit better performance and a little bit better range for what I'm trying to do. So that's exactly what we did. The biggest thing that they did is they made some modifications to the internals of the struts to give me a little bit of extra travel compared to a standard off-the-shelf 3R. A few other tweaks inside, and then the other really cool thing was I was aware that, you know, if you take the left strut top and you put it on the right strut, if you want more caster, it gives you a better angle to basically pull that strut back to give you more caster when you're doing the alignment. And so they did that for me as well. So there's a lot of little custom tweaks, and the quality of the suspension is awesome. It's a higher spring rate. So it's basically I have 12 kg fronts and 9 kg rear springs. The monotube inverted dampers. There's so many cool features of this suspension. I cannot wait to get the car on the ground and aligned and drive it and see what it's like. So it's going to be a big change compared to the coilovers that I had on there before. So I'm excited about that, but now let's talk about the other changes I'm making to the suspension, because those changes are actually almost even bigger than just the coilovers themselves. Okay, so in the initial walk around video, if you watched that and you watched the video that we made about some of the camber issues we were having on the Pikes Peak car, you might notice, like I did, that there was some interesting similarities. The biggest one being that this car, my WRX, was stuck at 2 degrees negative camber, just like we were stuck with the Pikes Peak car. Now on that car, by putting on a 25mm taller ball joint that reduced our roll correction by half, we were able to get more camber adjustment out of it. But one of the things I realized that I had an option to do was, one, to run this taller ball joint, but two, I had the option, because this is a wagon, to put on a longer control arm, the Sedan lower control arm. And so that's what I've done. My feeling there is that if I'm adding roll correction, but I add a longer control arm, that should help me with basically keeping the camber adjustment in a range where we would want it to be. Something where I could get into, hopefully, like the 4 degrees of negative camber. But I had a lot of options here to improve caster as well, because I was stuck at 4 degrees of caster, and that's all I could get with everything that I had on the car previously. So we've completely had a rethink here. So we've got the 25 millimeter taller ball joints, and I haven't told you the brand yet. They're on this car, on the Pikes Peak car. Basically, you might know the brand. We just want to try them out, shake them down, make sure that they work, make sure that they're reliable before I give you more information on that. So that's a key part of the puzzle here. But then also, we've got the Sedan STI lower control arms. So these are 2004 to 2006 STI lower control arms, which are a little bit longer, and they have more caster compared to the WRX lower control arms. We replaced the anti-lift kit in the back with a white line race anti-lift kit. So all of those components together should hopefully give us a little bit better caster and better camber range compared to what we had before. So I've got the old control arm here, and I want to kind of try and give you a sense of the plan here, what we're working with. So on the lower control arm, you have a front and rear pivot point, which determines the axis that the control arm moves in. And normally the control arm this axis is largely flat, so the ball joint is going to move largely in a straight up and down motion. So what we've done here with the anti-lift kit is that drops the rear mounting point, which makes this lower control arm now move on a slope, which is going to let the ball joint move basically through an angle instead of a straight up and down line. Now, the 03R coilovers, we have that racked or adjusted top hat, which is going to let us hold that strut back. The hope is that this angle that the ball joint is going to move in will then match the angle of the knuckle and the strut as well. So we're going to have a nice smooth movement as the suspension goes through its motion now with all of this extra caster. Now, so by moving the rear pivot point of the control arm down, we get this angled movement, which gives us a little bit more caster, because where the ball joint sits is going to be further forward as it is sitting lower. And that's what the 25 millimeter ball joint gives us. That gives us more of a downward slope of the lower control arm as the car is sitting at rest, sitting in its normal height. So the thing you got to keep in mind with the McPherson suspension is that when your suspension linkages are dead flat, that is when you have the maximum distance between the ball joint and the axis that the arm is pivoting on. And now by bringing the control arm down, that's where we're going to get a lot more length increase, and so basically an outward movement of the knuckle as the suspension is compressed. That should help us with camber, dynamic camber, as does caster. So the more caster gives us more dynamic camber. So basically we're going to have a lot more favorable movement with the front suspension now than we had before. In the rear, those white line lateral links, they've worked well for a long time, but they were in need to be replaced. So we're just replacing those like for like. Got to freshen everything up in the back. But the 03Rs, they have that camber adjust top hat in the rear. So now we can add camber in the rear with those top hats. That's going to hold the top of the strut in the rear in, hopefully give us some more favorable behavior as that suspension is compressed as well. So those adjustments in the front and in the rear, that should really make a big impact on our camber and caster settings for this car, and basically the behavior that this car is going to go through as the suspension goes through its motion. So that's the hope. All that's left to do now is basically get everything tightened up, put on the alignment rack, see where we land, see where we can end up with it as far as camber and caster, and then drive the car and see what we think. So that'll be the next installment. So thanks very much for watching. Really appreciate your support as always. Until next time, as always, stay tuned with Flat Irons Tuning.